I've done a lot of things in my career. I've taken a lot of courses. There is maybe a probable way to skip the raw data interpretation stage, but it won't be easier than learning to interpret the raw data. That was my conclusion. If that is possible, we're not being straightforward about it. And if it is possible and we're not being straightforward about it, it's not easier. And that was my conclusion after many years of trying to dig through an industry that wasn't being straightforward with me. The answer that I was looking for that no one wanted to tell me was, you need to learn to read the squiggly lines. And you should want to learn to read that sooner than later. And the reason why they don't want to tell you to do that is because nobody really knows how to give you essentially a container to learn that in a contained, reasonable way where you won't get overwhelmed and quit. I found that phenotypes were that such container. There are what starts off as 11 simple, very distinguishable categories to start separating things into. %85 improvement in mental health report following pairing a medication with a specific phenotype. Geez. Okay, have you seen 85% in any mental health studies for any medication? Yeah, that's pretty good. So let's review each phenotype. We're just going to go through them one by one. 'They just kind of melt in the chair when it finally clicks. You'll actually watch as they just going along, and all of a sudden, click, you'll see the alpha kind of start to percolating, and then it grows. And generally it happens in a session. I've probably seen a handful of employees who are shadowing me see it happen for the first time. And we just look over at the client and we're like, how do you feel? And I've several popped in my head as I'm thinking about this, several specific clients, and they always go, I feel really good. I remember one of them with like beads of sweat on their face. I was like, are you doing all right? They're like, I feel good. Like, one of them said, I don't need to drink. This is the feeling that I aim for. It's like, oh, well, you were aiming for normal, and normal is reasonable. Let's figure out how to get that. This is our GABAergic approach for neurofeedback. It addresses attention, it addresses arousal, it can be grateful for withdrawal or post-acute withdrawal. It's good for keeping them stable. It's just in general not a bad one to leave in the mix. Oftentimes, if you have no alpha, you're going to do a mix of high beta down and SMR protocols. And there's a whole bunch of different SMR protocols you can do. There are a lot of other things that we want to address because not everybody's going to be here for alcoholism, okay? But this is, if you're dealing with clients who are not alcoholics or they're not on some downer or something else or some other drug, well, they're just here for, what are they here for? Are they here for anxiety? Some of them are going to disavow anxiety as well. That's okay. That doesn't mean you have nothing to offer them, okay? Let's look at this really carefully and think about this person, the whole person, and how they may have created an adaptive relationship to this nervous system that they've had their whole life. They've had an incredible amount of time to build a positive or useful relationship to it, especially if they're heavily resourced in their community. Which is not bad. That doesn't mean you can't help them. We've got some excitatory frontal beta in the anterior cingulate gyrus, and that immediately following that beta presentation, mu, C3, C4. Mu is a wicket shape, which means it's sharp on one side, round on the other, like a fence post, okay? Presented at C3, C4. It can migrate posteriorly, so it can go down a little bit. And you can see it a little bit in P3, P4 sometimes if it's like really loud. And it's a social tuned out or social dissociation. When I say dissociation, I don't want you to think trauma. Okay, I want you, because that's more back right brain, I want you to think frontal lobe. Okay, so not a trauma dissociation, but more of a literal dissociation. There are some things with researching phenotypes that prove to be a little bit difficult. We do not organize our system by neuromarkers or by phenotypes. We organize them generally by diagnostic category, which is, again, a descriptive adaptation of the medical model. That's not incredibly useful for, sorting things by mechanism of action. You kind of have to know all the literature, or you have to interview a lot of super intelligent older people who've been around a long time to gather up these things, or you have to use a lot of AI systems very, very, very carefully, which is a whole nother talk, because if you don't, you'll waste way more time than it will save. AI is deceptively smart, and I mean deceptively.
Yeah. Sue son in the house. 500,000 brains deep, son. EEG sword sharp, protect your cortex. Hey, I'm the squiggle slayer, artifact tamer, pace cap samurai, phenotype namer. 500,000 brains on the scrolls I've read. I spot a jaw clench twitch, you call seizure instead. Low voltage fast, I blast from the past. Buckle slow and beta spindles, shadows I cast. Lambda at the occipital, eyes flick quick. Insular whisper secrets, coherence don't stick. Wu-Tang, EE, squiggles we bring. Phenotype profits in the brainwave ring. No Z-score gimmicks, we keep it legit. Gunkel clan forever artifacts. We split. That you're pushing scores, phase reset math. But J-cut paths with the phenotype staff. Swingle on the side with his clinical cue. But Gunkel's on the island, schooling the crew. Transients lurk like ghosts in the stream. Epileptiform spikes try to crash the dream. But Jay with a grin like a wizard in pace says that's just bad jail, son, know your place. Wu-Tang, EEG, brainwaves we sling. Squiggle assassins with the herons ring. Insular deep beat spindles lit. Gunkel clan forever phenotypes legit. Protect your cortex. Sue Sun Summit, never forget. Jay Gunkel man, the artifact master, the phenotype prophet, the 500,000 brain general. Wu-Tang EEG ain't nothing to squiggle with. Wu-Tang EEG ain't nothing to squiggle with. Wu-Tang EEG ain't nothing to squiggle with. Wu-Tang gang, Wu-Tang gang, Wu-Tang gang. Yeah, 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 yeah. Wu-Tang gang. Wu-Tang
So let's think about that for a second. You got a lot of alpha in the left frontal lobe, and you could have beta in the right frontal lobe as well, or it could be too much beta or too much alpha. And those are going to present similarly in some ways. There's a little bit variance in those two scenarios, but they are going to have the same approach withdrawal dynamic, despite the energy differences between them. Less approach, more withdrawal. That's your SAD type. Okay, that makes sense, right? So SAD type depression is not enough approach, too much withdrawal. Okay, now let's reverse the dynamic a little bit. We have either beta, which is hyperexcitable. So we've got beta activating and engaging the left hemisphere. So the left hemisphere is hyperactivated or it's just activated. And then the right hemisphere is relatively imbalanced in that it's deactivated. So our emotional, dealing with the unknown, is too deactivated. And our dealing with the known is more activated relatively, or just generally more activated. So unknown, tuned out. Dealing with the known, tuned up, or relatively tuned up. So think about that. Too much approach, not enough withdrawal. That imbalance, again, is going to be thinking about this right hemisphere is also dealing with the unknown. It's also emotional regulation. So we've got a deficit in emotional regulation, also a deficit of withdrawal. That's your agitated depression subtype, because we're not regulating our emotions well, but we're also not withdrawing. So you get agitation, outward expression of frustration, outward expression of dysregulated emotions. And the asymmetry itself in general has been noted to be associated with depression in general, frontally and just globally. There's going to be some studies cited on that later. But again, right hemisphere, too activated. Think about it from activation, deactivation, because you'll get yourself a little bit confused. We've talked about this in previous modules, so I want you to draw on some of that previous training. But beta frequencies, overexcitable, over hyperperfused, too much blood flow, especially 18 to 30 hertz or 20 to 30 hertz. Alpha, typically, especially 8 to 12, kind of tuning out, idling mechanism. So we're thinking underperfusion, low perfusion, that kind of thing. So when we have an imbalance in perfusion, which is really what we're measuring, a balance in blood flow perfusion, you're not getting this kind of tug-of-war balancing act between the lobes that you're supposed to get. These individuals are going to have family lives where there's going to be elements of codependency. Whenever you have sort of desperateness from disorder, especially when it's reoccurring, there's going to be a bid for codependency and there's going to be a habit of codependency. I always like to explain to other colleagues that I'm working with or training that, codependency is sort of this thing that naturally evolves. It's sort of built into parenting, which is why it exists so naturally in life and we don't know how to dissect it from our other relationships. If you can say, well, what if you defined codependency in any way, you might say, well, preventing somebody from suffering from their own actions. It's like, yeah, we do that with kids and we do that with the disabled. We don't let kids run out into traffic. So it's like, okay, well, we either got to fine tune that definition a little bit or, we have to accept that there's something that we don't typically call codependency that's sort of foundationally built into parenting and that's supposed to essentially we're supposed to grow out of it and scale out of it. And we're not really good at that. There isn't an instinct for that. So moms and dads don't really have an instinct for shedding that layer of help. And when you have disability, that instinct to help carry the load can really metastasize into other problems in that it can actually become the main problem. And a good book for that would be Codependency No More by Melody Beattie. That book is primarily focused around addictions. However, I do think it's the best book to read even for non-addicts.
I'm the squiggle slayer, artifact tamer, pace cap samurai, phenotype namer, 500,000 brains on the scrolls I read. I spot a jaw clench twitch, you call seizure instead. Low voltage fast, I blast from the past. Buckle slow and beta spindles, shadows I cast. Lambda at the occipital, eyes flick quick, insular whisper secrets, coherence don't stick. Wu-Tang, E-E, squiggles we bring. Phenotype profits in the brainwave ring. No Z-score gimmicks, we keep it legit. Gunkel clan forever artifacts. We split that you're pushing scores face.